Welcome to Decision 2018 here live on our WMC Action News 5 Facebook page. It is Election Day in Tennessee, and the polls are now officially closed just moments ago. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kanji Anthony.
And I'm Joe Birch. There may still be some voters in line, so we'll have to see how that goes at the precincts all across Shelby County and across West Tennessee. Over the past few weeks, and of course today, voters cast their ballots in races for the statewide offices and the general election ballots right here in Shelby County, including we have statewide Tennessee governor, and here locally in Shelby County, the race for county mayor and sheriff. We have Decision 2018 team coverage covering all these major races. And let's start with the hotly contested gubernatorial races. WMC Action News 5's Andrew Douglas joins us live right here in the studio with a look at the candidates. Andrew?
Well, it's an exciting night, Joe and Kanji. Evening to you. 4 Republicans, 2 Democrats battling out for the governor's office. As we mentioned at the top of the hour, polls close. They closed about 2 minutes ago. We haven't received any numbers yet, but what's interesting is that, of course, East Tennessee is in the Eastern time zone. So we're hoping after about the next few minutes or so, we should get some numbers from East Tennessee. At least that's the thought right now on who will be at the top of the leaderboard when it comes to the Republican primary. Of course, we've talked so much about, and we've all seen those ads of the Republican contenders for the governor of Tennessee. You have Congresswoman Diane Black, Randy Boyd, State Speaker Beth Harwell, and Bill Lee. Certainly, just a few weeks ago, there was a poll that came out that said all 4 are within striking distance of each other, winning this. Carl Dean and Craig Fitzhugh are on the Democratic side. So then locally, and again, polls closed 3 minutes ago, so we shouldn't get anything until about 8 o'clock. That's according to the administrator of elections. So according to what we're hearing, that's going to happen in about, well, less than an hour from now. But Shelby County mayor's race is expected to be very closely watched, with State Senator Lee Harris against Shelby County trustee David Lenore. And then the sheriff's race. You have the chief deputy, Floyd Bonner, and Dale Lane, the director of Shelby County Office of Preparedness. There are other races that are interesting for most. Of course, many of you perhaps saw some of the commercials with David Kustoff and Dr. George Flynn. They are part of the Republican primary for the Congressional District 8 in West Tennessee. Those are the big races that we are watching right now. I have a computer right here, a laptop. The minute some numbers come down, whether it's early voting, whether it's absentee ballots, as soon as they come down, I'll pass it along to you. Joe, Kanji?
All right, thanks very much, Andrew. And of course, when we get those numbers from East Tennessee, which is an hour earlier in the Eastern time zone, we should be seeing some results in the governor's race and other races, so we will bring that right to you.
All right, you know, we have our teams all across the WMC Action News 5 viewing area. Our Joyce Peterson is down at the Shelby County Election Commission. She's been speaking with the administrator of elections, Linda Phillips, and watching the goings on there. Joyce, what can you tell us is happening out there right now?
Well, it's very calm. They're waiting for the polling places to close. They wait until the last voter has voted. So if anybody was in line at 7, then they get to vote before that polling place is closed. 166 polling locations throughout Shelby County. 1,100 poll workers this year working in those polling places. They're paid $190 for today's work, and that includes 3 days of training. They are loyal to the democratic process, and without them, this would not happen. The election would not be possible. So we want to give them a shout out today for their hard work. When the polls all close, then the information from the machines is taken out and taken to one of 6 locations, regional locations. Then from there, it's all amassed and brought back here to election headquarters in East Memphis. We're out by the Penal Farm. I don't know how many folks have been out here. They moved from downtown a couple years ago, and so everything is out east. It has been extremely calm here today. Linda Phillips, who is the elections administrator for the Election Commission, says no major problems to report. A minor power outage at a Collierville polling place, but it was so brief that it really didn't disrupt anything. But nothing else major to speak of today. Turnout, we've heard it has been moderate. No reports of any large crowds, no huge lines, anything like that. I can tell you that 86,000 voters turned out for early voting in Shelby County. The breakdown was about 60% Democratic to 40% Republican. It'll be interesting to see what the numbers reveal for today's turnout. So while we wait for all the polling places to close, in the back here at election headquarters, there have been workers, 4 of them, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, who have been going through the absentee ballots. And in order to count those, they have to manually insert them into a scanner. It is a very tedious process, but that is what they do all day, counting those. Then the absentee ballots and the early voting numbers will be tabulated once the polling precincts are all closed. Absentee and early voting numbers are tabulated. Those will be the first to come out. As you heard Andrew mention, usually about an hour after all the polls are closed. And if there aren't any issues, then we should start to see some numbers at 8 o'clock. You can log onto our website to see the numbers, and I usually get them first here, so I'll shoot them back to Joe and Kanji, so you'll be the first to see them as they become available. A lot of big races. New mayor, new sheriff for Shelby County. Very exciting. We'll have updates for you throughout the evening. Until then, live in East Memphis, I'm Joyce Peterson. Joe Kanji, back to you.
All right, we are now getting some numbers, and we're looking at Andrew Douglas there, who's busy looking at his computer, because we are seeing some of those first numbers from the Eastern time zone in East Tennessee, where we have some precincts reporting.
Oh, you're starting with the Republican candidates, I understand, Andrew?
Yes. So these are very, very early numbers. Looking at these, I mean, we're looking at something probably around 2,000 votes that have just come in here. Right now, with these 2,000 votes, Diane Black has about 33% of those votes, Randy Boyd 29%, Bill Lee 23%, and then Beth Harwell 12%. So Diane Black right now, and again, this is less than 1% of the vote in the state of Tennessee. She is leading with 699 votes. Again, this is very, very early. Randy Boyd is 613, Bill Lee 489, 263 for Beth Harwell. So that translates. Again, just the first few numbers, and again, the polls have been closed now for a little bit more than an hour in the Eastern time zone in the state of Tennessee, and I believe that's where these are coming from. So 33% for Diane Black, Randy Boyd 29%, Bill Lee 23%, and Beth Harwell 12%. Now, if we were to look at the Democrats in their race for governor, you have Carl Dean and Craig Fitzhugh. And again, this is early numbers here. Craig Fitzhugh, 1,100 votes. Carl Dean, 627. So it's hard to tell exactly where these votes are coming from, but Craig Fitzhugh winning currently at the moment, but again, very, very early. These numbers will be coming in. It's fast and furious here, I suspect. So as soon as I get any more updates, Joe and Kanji, I'll pass it along to you.
Right, these are the very, very early numbers, but we do have our WMC political analyst, Michael Nelson, joining us live on the telephone, and Mike is out of the city right at the moment. But Mike, let's talk about some of the things at stake in these races tonight. And this race for Tennessee governor, we expect to be quite a close one this evening, don't we?
We do, and any one of the 4 candidates has a shot on the Republican side. Certainly, Diane Black was the congresswoman from Middle Tennessee, was the early front runner, but she is also the only Washington figure in the race. She spent most of her career as a member of Congress, a leading member of Congress, and being a Washington figure in the Republican Party in recent times, especially in the Trump era, is a mixed blessing. And then beyond that, we've got 2 other people experienced in politics and government, but at the level of Tennessee, and that is Randy Boyd, the state's Economic Development Commissioner, and Beth Harwell, who is the leader of the Republicans in the State House of Representatives. And then we have this 4th candidate from outside the world of politics, Bill Lee, another Middle Tennessean, a successful business person. All 4 of these candidates have their own appeals, and they also have all been willing to spend their own money for their own campaigns. In addition to raising additional funds, they've all been able to run well-financed campaigns, get their message out. Anybody who watches television in Memphis knows they've been getting their messages out. So, it may turn out that one of these candidates breaks through as a clear leader tonight, but it's important to understand there's no runoff primary. So if somebody gets 30%, and that's more than anybody else, that 30% will be enough to make him or her the Republican nominee for governor.
Mike, let's talk about the U.S. Senate race, a very pivotal race that's at the eye of the political storm these days. We know that when we find out who is going to be running against one another in the Republican and Democratic parties, that it will be a huge change of what's happening in Congress. Can you just talk about the impact of the U.S. Senate race?
Well, the Senate, the United States Senate, nationwide is divided extremely closely. It's the Republicans have presently one vote more than the Democrats in the Senate. So when you look at a state like Tennessee, which is currently represented by two Republicans, one of whose seat is up this year, and that Republican, Senator Bob Corker, is retiring, they're going to be putting up a new nominee, and it's pretty clear that it's going to be Representative Marsha Blackburn, U.S. Representative Marsha Blackburn. And the Democrats are looking at this as one of the few opportunities across the country to take a seat away from the Republicans. They haven't had success in winning statewide elections for quite a while. But Phil Bredesen, former governor, who was elected in 2002 and then reelected overwhelmingly in 2006, he's sort of come off the bench to be their candidate. So the U.S. Senate race, we know it's going to be somebody new because Corker is retiring. It could be Bredesen. It could be Blackburn. They've both had their campaigns for the November general election underway for months now. And that Senate race is what's making Tennessee an object of interest, a state of interest in the rest of the country, because it could tip the balance of power between Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. Senate come the start of the new year.
The Associated Press tonight is declaring that former Governor Bredesen has won the Democratic nomination for the U.S. Senate race to replace Senator Corker. So, that was a foregone conclusion, basically. But
that's
now
in the category of that's in the category of predicting the sun will come up in the east tomorrow. That was bound to happen.
And Marsha Blackburn has been declared the victor on the Republican side. But in these very early numbers we're seeing back in the Tennessee governor's race, numbers I'm looking at from the Tennessee Secretary of State's office, Bill Lee has gone out to an early lead. Now, we don't know specifically where in East Tennessee these votes are coming in, but he has 38, almost 39% of the vote, with only 20,000 votes for him, but still a significant lead over Randy Boyd, who's 7,000 votes behind with 26%, and then Diane Black trailing with 21% of the vote, and Beth Harwell a distant fourth place with 12%. Again, this is extremely early East Tennessee numbers coming in.
Okay, Mike, just hold tight there in Bristol, England. We are now going to check in with Andrew Douglas. He has some new numbers that are coming in. Andrew?
Yeah, okay, so Joe mentioned the fact that Bill Lee is ahead with roughly 18,600 votes. That's 38.9% of the results now, followed by Randy Boyd with 27%, and then Diane Black with 21%. I just looked up the breakdown of counties that are currently giving us some of these vote totals. And again, this is super early here. Bradley County, Dyer County, Clay County, Granger County, Madison, which I believe is the Jackson area, Haywood County, which is in West Tennessee, Marshall, Putnam. So I guess there's 3 or 4 different counties from West Tennessee that are weighing in with these numbers. And again, they're very, very early. But Dyer County, Haywood County, Madison County, in addition to Marshall, Putnam, Clay, and Bradley County. So again, these are where we're getting these numbers that have Bill Lee ahead by about 5,000 votes or so, a little bit less than 5,000, over Randy Boyd. Diane Black's in third currently with about 21% of the vote, and then Beth Harwell with 12%. And by the way, no surprise here, but Carl Dean doing very well with Democrats voting today. Carl Dean, 68% of the vote versus Craig Fitzhugh with 26%. Again, super early. Joe, Kanji.
So, Mike, I've been looking here at the turnout by party. And Democrats coming out early voting, 61% Democrats, Republicans 39% of the total vote.
In Shelby County.
In Shelby County. Yeah, this is Shelby County. I should say that. But I do want to ask what you think that says. You know, some Republicans claiming that, you know, their folks are not waiting, that we're going to wait until Election Day as opposed to doing the early voting. What do you think is really going on here?
Well, in Shelby County, across the state really, but in Shelby County in particular, because most Shelby County residents, most Shelby County voters are African American and Democrats, and the effort to turn out that community for early voting is an organized effort. Churches are involved in it. And so you tend to see Democrats voting earlier because the party places more emphasis on that, and working through the churches and so on, they have the mechanism to get people to turn out and vote early. Republicans tend not to place the same focus on that. So we've seen in previous Shelby County elections, you really can't go by the early voting numbers in trying to figure out who's actually going to win on Election Day, because if you did, you'd think the Democrats would win every time. And in truth, it's been a while since the Democrats won a county mayor or county sheriff. I should say that statewide, twice as many Republicans turned out to vote early as Democrats. Shelby County is kind of an exception to that pattern. And the reason is that the Republicans statewide have this very competitive election for who's going to be the party's nominee for governor. And you haven't had the same level of competition for a statewide office, senator or governor, on the Democratic side, where it's been clear from the beginning it would be Phil Bredesen for Senate. And although Craig Fitzhugh is challenging Carl Dean for the Democratic gubernatorial nomination, Dean has generally been regarded as way out ahead. So to the extent that, you know, things are working one way in Shelby County and a different way in the rest of the state, it just makes it all the more important that we see what happens among the people who actually turn out on Election Day.
Well, we see a pattern emerging, Mike, here with the race for Tennessee governor. Bill Lee, in this very early numbers, has amassed 40,000 plus votes, and 40% of the vote that has been counted so far in this very early going, with Randy Boyd collecting 25,000 plus votes and at 25%, and Diane Black at 21%. And so it does appear this man who was a total outsider, Bill Lee, really connected with voters. You know, one of the things he did was he drove a Winnebago to every county in the state, all 95 counties, which is a rather arduous task in our very long parallelogram-like state. And he made an incredible effort to reach out to people, to connect with people, and it looks like his campaign that was based largely on his faith, just enunciating on television and coming straight out of the gate with a faith-focused message, is truly resonating with the votes so far that we're counting here tonight.
I think you're right. He's been the surprise of this election because, as we were talking about earlier, Diane Black took a strong early lead. Randy Boyd, who spent the most money and has held a statewide office as Commissioner of Economic Development, it seemed like a two-person race. Those two people, though, thinking it was a two-person race, you remember the commercials we were seeing, even up to just a few weeks ago, so many of them involved black attacking Boyd and Boyd attacking black. And in some ways, Bill Lee was able to, if voters essentially believed both candidates that the other one was no good, then there's Bill Lee as an alternative. And once he started coming up in the polls, he suffered his own attacks, but he'd already had the advantage of kind of sneaking through the partisan sniping between the other two and looking like a good alternative. And Joe, you mentioned his intense faith and his personal story as one that would appeal to Christians of an evangelical wing who are prominent among Tennesseans. But on top of that, Bill Lee is sort of like Donald Trump 2 years ago in this way. There are a lot of ways in which he's not like Donald Trump, but he was able to say, if you're fed up with the way government and politics works, I'm not from that world. I've built a business and I've helped in my community, and that worked for Trump, the ultimate outsider. And I think as the only candidate for the Republican nomination who didn't have long experience in the political world, some voters thought, well, then he's not tainted by that. So whether he'll win or not, it's too early to tell. But the fact that he got into sort of into the race in a very dramatic way and is a strong contender, that's telling us something about how this campaign unfolded to his advantage, and how much Republican voters, or at least many Republican voters, devalue experience in government as a qualification to be governor of the state of Tennessee.
That is truly remarkable. And Randy Boyd has an incredible business record as the owner of a very large multi-million-dollar firm. He was the CEO of a Knoxville-based company that owned the Invisible Fence line that was so great about keeping your dog in your yard.
And some baseball teams, right?
That's right. The Knoxville Smokies. And he did an incredible job under Governor Haslam as the Commissioner of Economic Development. Before that, he was a part of the Drive to 55 to try to convince Tennesseans to go get a post-secondary degree and have 55% of the state population have at least a community college degree. And they made the Tennessee Promise come true during the Haslam term. And this was largely under Randy Boyd's leadership, where they offered free community college to all Tennessee high school graduates, and or a tech high school, school opportunity after high school. So for Boyd, after spending $20 million and having a pretty stellar record with the state, to not cash in on the vote tonight after $20 million of commercials is astounding.
All right, well, let's now, right now we're going to turn our focus on local races here in Shelby County. I understand Kelly Cook is following this race for Shelby County Sheriffs. She's live at Dale Lane's headquarters. Hi, Kelly.
Hi there, guys. Yeah, things are starting to fill out here at Dale Lane's headquarters here just off Summer in Memphis. A lot of the poll workers who have been working the polls and the precincts all evening and all afternoon finally coming in to the headquarters to watch those numbers come in. Right now, Dale Lane, who is currently Director of Office of Preparedness for Shelby County, seeking the position of sheriff. We are waiting for the numbers. Mr. Lane, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us.
Thank you for being here tonight.
How are you feeling right now, just so early on?
Oh, I'm excited. We're getting a lot of positive reports back from the polls, and just ready to go serve. This whole campaign we've been pushing a message of hope. We want to make a difference in some of our young people's lives and turn this youth violence around, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, talk to me about how this process has been for you on the campaign trail. What have you learned about what folks in Shelby County are really looking for?
Regardless of where I go in the county, we want three things. We want safe schools, safe neighborhoods, and we don't want to have to live in fear of violent crime. And so we put together a very specific plan to address that addresses root causes of crime. so that we can prevent it on the front end. And so I'm excited. I'm looking forward to the folks giving me an opportunity to be their sheriff, and nobody's going to work harder at it than I am.
Okay, so I know you've got the whole crew here. Tell me about who you have here today.
Well, we've got friends, we've got supporters that've been out at the polls for us all day today. They're behind that fence eating right now so that they can watch the numbers come in. So I'm excited. We believe we're going to have a couple of 300 people here tonight, and so to hopefully celebrate a very strong victory. That's what we're looking for.
Well, I tell you this, many people are saying this is going to be maybe one of the closest races out there. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it very well could be. It very well could be. And we've worked really hard. We've done our best, and we've run an honorable campaign. And, and so that's something I'm very proud of. I've got some really good people who believe in our vision, and so I'm excited to see how it comes out.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. Dale Lane, candidate here for Shelby County Sheriff, right now greeting many of the folks who are coming in. I spoke to him earlier, and he simply said we are cautiously optimistic about what's going on. His grandson is around here, running around with his sign as well. I'm sure he was out there campaigning, so he's kind of got that down packed as well. But numbers just now starting to roll in. They are hoping that it will come in quickly. We'll get some answers to whether or not Dale Lane can take the top spot and fill in for Bill Oldham, who came in 2010, has been there now for 8 years, and now a new sheriff will take his place and possibly could be the Republican candidate, Dale Lane. Kanji, let's send it back to you.
All right, thanks very much there, Kelly. And so you're right, Bill Oldham is term limited as Shelby County Sheriff. He was required to retire from the sheriff's office after 8 years, 2 full terms. And what was a big surprise is he endorsed the Democrat. Oldham is a Republican, and you'd normally expect the Republican sheriff, the incumbent, to endorse the forthcoming Republican nominee Dale Lane, but instead he endorsed the man on the left of your screen, Floyd Bonner, the Democratic nominee.
That's right. He's the chief deputy for the Shelby County Sheriff's Office currently. And so for decades, he has worked with the current sheriff. So they have built a relationship. And we are now going to check in with Ariana Poindexter, who is following the sheriff's race as well. She is at Floyd Bonner's headquarters. Hi, Ariana.
Hey, Kanji, yes, we are at Floyd Bonner's watch party. Hundreds of people piling in. I want to give you a live look here. You can see it's starting to get very packed here. A lot of people, they are anxious, they're excited, waiting to hear the results. Now, the man of the hour, Floyd Bonner, he is not in here yet. He spent most of his day going to different polling places, trying to catch any last-minute voters, persuading them to vote for him. Now, again, just to recap for you, as we mentioned that Floyd Bonner is currently the chief deputy for the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. He's been in that position, or he's been with the Sheriff's Department office, rather, for 38 years. Currently, he's, in charge of overseeing day-to-day operations out of the jail. And if elected, one of the things he says he wants to focus on is jail overcrowding. He also says that it should be focused on releasing nonviolent offenders and making sure they don't return. But again, we are still waiting to hear from the man of the hour. As soon as he comes in, we're told he's going to give some sort of speech. As soon as he comes in, we will let you guys know, and we'll bring you live coverage of that. But for now, reporting live in East Memphis, I'm Ariana Poindexter, WMC Action News 5.
All right, thanks very much, Ariana. And now I believe we're going to head out to David Lenore's headquarters. The county trustee is trying to move up at the county building and move into the top office in Shelby County. And tonight we are going to have a brand new mayor. It's either going to be David Lenore or Lee Harris. And our Janice Broach is following Mr. Lenore's campaign. And Janice, how are things going?
Yeah, well, things are going well here. As you can see behind me, there are people here. It's kind of filling up, and there's a room right over there where that is filling up as well. So people are anxious. They obviously hope that David Lenore wins. He is not here yet. He's supposed to get here between 8 and 8:30. And, of course, all of this depends on when the returns come in, depending on whether we know anything or not. Right there you can see nothing's in yet, but that's going to have some results for us to see. And I can walk you around here. When David Lenore does get here and makes his announcement one way or the other, it's going to be right there, and he's going to walk out of that door. So he's not here right now, but everybody here seems to be having a pretty good time, just waiting to find out who is going to be the next Shelby County mayor. Joe?
Thanks very much, Janice Broach. And we have his opponent covered as well tonight.
That's right. You know, this has been a very testy race, Joe. I've been getting those mailers. There have been tag ads, and not only in our mailboxes, but also on television. A lot of coverage from different publications just showing the tensions with this specific race. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out, almost a microcosm of our community. So let's check in with Kendall Downing. He's live downtown with Lee Harris's camp. What's going on out there?
Well, hey there, Joe and Kanji. We are here at the Lee Harris watch party in downtown Memphis, One Commerce Square. I was having a little trouble hearing you, and you may be maybe having a little trouble hearing me. It's quite loud in here. I'm going to step out of the way. My photographer Sheila is going to pan and show you a pretty large room here that is coming together for Lee Harris's campaign watch party. Of course, Harris is a current Tennessee state senator who decided to run for Shelby County mayor. He has served as a Memphis City Council member in the past, and also is a professor at the University of Memphis Law School. He is taking on David Lenore in the race for Shelby County mayor. Now, one thing to consider, you know, a lot of people always wonder what's the difference between Shelby County mayor and mayor of the city of Memphis. Well, obviously the county mayor is over the whole county, but that specifically pertains to certain responsibilities like schools and the jail, the sheriff's office. Those are duties that the county mayor is involved with. So the role of Shelby County mayor is very important here in county politics. So we have not seen Lee come into the area so far tonight. We are standing by to get the first returns from the Shelby County Election Commission. We'll be following it all night. It's a very loud party here. They are hoping for a victory. Reporting live in downtown Memphis, Kendall Downing, WMC Action News 5.
All right, Kendall, thank you.
And, you know, I've been kind of crunching some of the numbers and looking at some of the stats that came out from our Shelby County Election Commission. I thought it was very interesting to see the ages of the voters, Joe. And I'm like, what happened with the millennials? So here, according to the Shelby County Election Commission, only 2% of the vote was from millennials.
Wow.
And then 79% was people over the age of 50 years old. And then, of course, in second place, but it was 79% for people over 50 and then 12% for people between ages 41 and 50. So it looks like the older people in the community are the ones who are making themselves available to go out to vote in our early voting in Shelby County. So very interesting breakdown of just looking at age and this election here, Decision 2018.
The biggest race tonight that's on the ballot statewide, of course, is the race for governor and the race in the Republican nomination for governor. And Bill Lee continues to have a big night. He has 37% of the vote counted with 70,000 plus votes. Randy Boyd is in second place with 25% of the vote, and he has some 47,000 plus votes. Diane Black, who was the consensus frontrunner for so many months as this campaign unfolded, is in third place with just 21% of the vote. Of course, it's early. It's only 7:34. Polls have been closed in East Tennessee for an hour and a half now. And so we are starting to get some of those numbers from over in East Tennessee. But this looks like a clear pattern developing from that part of the state as Bill Lee, the outsider, is making his mark.
And do we still have our friend in Bristol, England, with us? Are you there, Mike?
We do, and I'm watching these numbers, and if I were Randy Boyd, I guess I'd be thinking, well, it's still very early and, you know, a lot more returns to come in. But I'd also be worried because Randy Boyd is the one candidate in the race from East Tennessee. He is a Knoxville businessman and established in that part of the state, which for decades has been the Republican stronghold in Tennessee, even back to the Crump era when the state was overwhelmingly Democratic. East Tennessee was Republican. And that should be Randy Boyd's base. And you'd expect, to the extent that these early returns are coming in mostly from East Tennessee, where it's the Eastern time zone and the polls closed at 7 p.m. there, meaning earlier than in Nashville and Memphis, you'd think this would be the time that he'd be most likely to be in the lead. Joe, you were saying earlier that Boyd is somebody who, before he got into Tennessee state government as Economic Development Commissioner in Governor Haslam's administration, he had an extraordinary record in the business world. But I'll tell you, the Republican primary voters in the Trump era, but this has been building for a long time, are so suspicious of government and politics per se that the fact that he's been serving in government and serving ably in state government, I think in many voters' minds, Republican voters' minds, is a disqualification. They want somebody like Donald Trump who had no experience in government and politics at all, and who said, I'm not part of that mess. I'm not part of that swamp. And that's a reason to vote for him. And I think to some extent that may be working against Randy Boyd, against Diane Black, against Beth Harwell, all of whom are experienced in government.
Yes. Well, I thought of Randy Boyd as Bill Haslam 2.0. I mean, I thought of him as the natural continuation of a very successful gubernatorial term by Bill Haslam, 2 consecutive, very successful terms. Haslam, of course, being overwhelmingly reelected by a landslide 4 years ago. And I think Haslam saw himself as the natural heir to the Haslam vote. And one could easily construct that, in the political back rooms as you're kind of drawing up a campaign. But you're right. The voting Republicans are hungry for change, for outsiders, for business leaders who have no history of any political office and have sort of a fresh slate where they can try to bring the priorities of Republican voters into state government.
And let's face it, Bob Corker, Senator Corker, one of the reasons he retired instead of running for re-election is that coming out of that same sort of moderate conservative Republican tradition, he might very well have been defeated in the Republican primary if he had run again. And there was talk of Governor Haslam maybe getting in the race, and he might very well have been defeated. The Republican Party that produced Bob Corker and Bill Haslam, even just 8-10 years ago, is not the Republican Party in Tennessee of today. Because what's happened in that period is Donald Trump has come along, and most Republicans in Tennessee strongly support President Trump, and they are rejecting that kind of long tradition in the Republican Party in Tennessee. Goes back to Howard Baker and Winfield Dunn and others of sort of moderate conservative, business conservatives, but not extreme in their political demeanor in any way. Corker and Haslam, for better or worse, are figures from the past, and now we're living in a different era.
Indeed.
Well, Michael, if you could just stand by, we're now going to check in with our reporter, Brandon Richard. Of course, we talked about this pivotal U.S. Senate race, and Brandon has been tracking the race, and he's looking into what is next. What's going on, Brandon?
Well, hey there. This race tonight is one that really produced no surprises because everybody pretty much knew how it was going to turn out. And indeed, a few minutes ago, it was called. Phil Bredesen won the Democratic nomination for the U.S. Senate, and Marsha Blackburn won the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate. Of course, both will be trying to replace outgoing Tennessee Senator Bob Corker. Both of these candidates have just kind of been able to focus on their own races. They haven't really gone after each other. They really were facing challengers with very little name recognition across the state. But in the weeks ahead, we will probably most likely see that change. Most likely see them go after each other because although this race didn't produce any surprises tonight in the primaries, this is going to be one of the most highly watched races in November because the control of the U.S. Senate could come down to how Tennessee votes. It is that close, and it will be that close between these two. Of course, President Trump has already endorsed Marsha Blackburn, and Phil Bredesen is a Democrat who obviously served as governor, but he is a Democrat with a real chance to win this race because he was a very popular governor, enjoyed support from many Republicans, and in order to win in Tennessee, that's the type of Democrat you have to be, somebody who can get support from a significant amount of Republicans. So this race ought to be very interesting. Phil Bredesen a few minutes ago, and he spoke to his supporters in a victory speech that was broadcast on his Facebook, thanking them. We haven't heard from Marsha Blackburn yet. Of course, that will change in this race. And of course, if you've been tired of all these campaign ads, get ready because more are coming with these two anyway. Back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Tell it,
Richard.
Brandon.
Yeah,
Tell
it like it is. And Michael Nelson, we're going to talk about the Senate race right now. And I'm just looking at the numbers from the Secretary of State's office. And so Marsha Blackburn, a very huge landslide victory as expected with almost 85% of the vote. And 162,000 people plus voted for her so far. And on the Democratic side, Phil Bredesen, the former mayor of Nashville and former governor of Tennessee, winning with 94% of the Democrats voting, but only 89,000 Democrats or 89,000 people declared themselves as Democrats in the primary and voted for him in this race. And so it's about almost 2-to-1 margin there for Marsha Blackburn and just raw vote totals right now. And that's an issue that looms large for Bredesen in November, don't you think?
Well, I think Bredesen should not worry too much about that because neither Democratic primary, the senator or governor, presented much of a contest. And so I think a number of Democrats statewide just chose to stay home today. That doesn't mean they will vote in November. They will vote in November. Republican primary voters had a real reason to turn out because of this intensely competitive contest for who will be the Republican nominee for governor. And, of course, once you're in the voting booth, if you're there to vote for one office, you're likely to vote for the other offices. So I think probably statewide we're going to see a much higher turnout on the Republican side today. But I don't think that's going to be terribly significant in terms of predicting what will happen this fall. Of course, in Shelby County, we're different because we have this also intensely competitive set of elections for county mayor, county sheriff, and that's been causing Democrats to want to come out and vote in Shelby County in a particular way, as well as Republicans. So it's going to be an interesting sort of mixed bag trying to sort out what different voter turnout figures mean tonight.
Thanks, Mike. Now, we're going to turn back to the local races. I understand that the current Shelby County Mayor, Mark Luttrell, is over at the headquarters for Dale Lane. As you know, Dale Lane is running for sheriff here, and, it's interesting to have the county mayor endorsing the Republican nominee. Can you talk about that and what you're seeing out there, Kelly?
Yeah, that's right, Kanji. We are now seeing even more people arriving here at Dale Lane's headquarters as they wait for those numbers to come in. As you mentioned, Kanji, Shelby County Mayor Mark Luttrell is here. He was an early supporter for Dale Lane and offered his endorsement early on in his campaign. Thank you for joining us, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you.
So talk to me right now about just your thoughts and why you chose to support Dale.
Well, I've known Dale Lane for as long as I've been in law enforcement, and I've often said that he's really the poster child for law enforcement officers. He's what we're looking for in good law enforcement officers from the standpoint of his personal integrity, his professional development, his dedication, his commitment to family, all of the above. And then he's a very smart lawman. He's been well educated in all the advanced schools. Plus, he's just got a good heart about him when it comes to dealing with the personal side of crime and dealing with the victims of crime. And I just think that he's what we need in politics to begin with, but certainly in law enforcement. the image that he presents is just really very positive and very can-do.
Yeah, you of course have quite a history in law enforcement and know the needs of Shelby County as mayor as well. So can you talk to me about what unique things you think Shelby County, or issues facing the biggest for the next sheriff of Shelby County? What do they need to focus on first?
Well, first of all, we're an urban community, and we have all of the challenges that you find in any urban community. Everything from diversity, the good and the bad that comes from diversity, the issues of juvenile crime and how we are going to confront that in a very positive way. Early childhood development, education, how education impacts crime, and the necessity for having a good, strong education system. Law enforcement today is much different from law enforcement of 25 or 30 years ago because it's more of a community type of policing effort. That's why it's important that if we're going to fight crime effectively, we not only have to have boots on the ground, which is important, but we've also got to deal with the causal effects of crime, and that has to do with education, jobs, poverty, health, all of the above, all those things that make for a livable community. And Dale has got the insight that it takes to really tackle those problems in a very coordinated fashion.
I got to ask you, so we just got the numbers in. I heard our analysts talking about Marsha Blackburn being the Republican nominee, going up against Phil Bredesen. Talk to me about that race. You know the politics.
Well, I think it's going to be an interesting race. You've got a very strong Republican candidate in Marsha Blackburn with a very proven track record, and then you've got Phil Bredesen, gubernatorial candidate that has statewide political appeal, as well as a good track record as governor. So you've got two very capable, very competent representatives of their two political parties. And I think the next few months is going to be really telling, and it's going to be challenging for both of them to get out there and really sell themselves as they're the best option for Tennessee going forward.
And finally, you are now stepping out as mayor of Shelby County. In your last few weeks in office,
29 days.
29 days, anything that you have planned, that you plan to do on your way out, and what advice would you have for the next mayor of Shelby County?
Well, first of all, it's my desire to have a seamless transition, and whoever the new mayor is. I'm going to be reaching out to them tonight and seeing if we can set up a meeting for tomorrow. I've already had my staff working on a transition book for the new mayor, so a guide for that person to get started as far as their planning is concerned. And we're going to do the best we can to make that a seamless transition, and a transition that serves the community well.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor Mark Luttrell, for the next 29 days. Thank you so much for joining us here on Action News 5. So they're going to thank you. And so now they're going to continue it to wrap up things here at the watch party. They're still waiting for those numbers to come in. As we interviewed Dale Lane earlier today, he is cautiously optimistic. He is going to be pulling out a win tonight. We'll be here for the long haul. Live here, Kelly Cook, WMC Action News 5. Back to you guys.
And it's interesting because, you know, Mayor Luttrell was the sheriff, his father, his name is on the detention center, so his endorsement of Dale Lane is very impactful. We should also note that Floyd Bonner has not yet come down at his watch party, but as soon as he does, we're going to listen in there and talk with Ariana down there. But we're now going to head on over to Andrew Douglas. He has been watching the numbers come in. He has some really big updates with the gubernatorial race. You are going to take us down almost to the areas.
Yeah, this is the kind of coverage that you're not going to see anywhere else, because we're cross-referencing all kinds of voting election results, and I want to give you the latest at 7:49 this evening. So we have Bill Lee. It's basically become a two-person race between Bill Lee and Randy Boyd for the Republican primary for governor. There are some of the election results that you see there. Bill Lee roughly has 101,000 votes. That's 34%, to Randy Boyd's 89,000, that's 30%. So it's 34% versus 30%. Bill Lee, Randy Boyd. Now, I looked up and I saw the counties that are coming in with these votes, okay? So the counties that are reporting some of these votes, there's 95 counties in the state of Tennessee, and there's over 60 that are reporting election results right now for the governor's race, Republican primary. And looking at the map and looking at the counties here, right now Bill Lee is winning with a majority of Middle Tennessee voters. He's also winning with a majority of East Tennessee voters. Boyd, who's in second place currently, has some upper East Tennessee voters that he is winning with, and has some West Tennessee voters that he is currently leading with. Diane Black, a congresswoman, she is currently winning with Upper Middle Tennessee and a county in Chattanooga. So right now, it appears to be, and again, there's over 60 counties reporting out of the 95 in the state of Tennessee. And right now, for the Republican primary in the state of Tennessee, Bill Lee and Randy Boyd are neck and neck, I guess you could say, maybe not, but there's about 12,000 votes that separate the two. Those are the latest numbers right there. You can see it there, 102 to 91, roughly 34% and 30%. We'll be watching this. Again, a long way to go, Joe and Kanji.
Indeed, but Boyd has been surging in the latest counts, and so there's still hope for Randy Boyd. But Diane Black is a distant third now with 20% of the vote of all the votes counted so far. The woman who is the House Budget Committee chairperson, who had a lot of national money spent on her campaign, who had at least the appearance of the endorsement of President Trump, although he announced yesterday, the White House announced yesterday, she didn't have the official endorsement, but she had used some opportunities, some photo ops with the president to highlight her work for the Trump agenda in Washington. And she is in third place. I think it's theoretically possible she could surge tonight, but the patterns show it's a night for either Bill Lee or Randy Boyd. And Beth Harwell is out at the moment.
So, Joe, as we know, Linda Phillips, the administrator for the elections, said that they were shooting for 8 p.m. to potentially start turning out those early voting results. And we are just, less than 8 minutes to that point. So we're going to check in now with our Joyce Peterson. She's live at the Shelby County Election Commission. Joyce, what's going on out there?
Well, I will show you what's going on. Allow me to step out of the way while my photographer, Adam Chrysler, zooms in on the screen. That is a live feed of the back room here. It's a warehouse, basically, where they bring all of the data and equipment from the polling places and start tabulating the votes. Not very crowded yet, so everything is still being done out at the polling places, locking up shop, getting the tapes out of the machine, getting the data cards. I will give you a little tour of the room here, let you know what's going on. You'll see the folks on the telephones. Those are longtime volunteers. They get paid for the day, but they have been doing this many, many years. Dave Brown's wife, Margaret, is one of the volunteers. They come here all day and answer questions from the polls. When poll workers have questions regarding anything, voter registration, whether paper balloting is allowed, you name it, they handle those kinds of questions. They are on the phone right now, so there are more questions coming in from the polls before poll workers lock up shop and bring everything here. You'll notice right here in front of me, Gail Jones Carson in the peach dress, very heavily involved in the Democratic Party. She always shows up at Election Commission headquarters to keep an eye on things, to make sure the votes are being tabulated in the correct way. Then in this direction, we have members of the media and the screen that we all watch to keep an eye out for the very first returns. So far, no returns. Also at the front of the room, you have members from the Republican and Democratic Party, watchers basically here to make sure everything goes smoothly. So we are waiting just like you are waiting. When the numbers start coming in, they give us hard copies, and then I call the station right away, read them the numbers, and then get them on the air. So as soon as we get any new information, we will bring it to you. I know folks are waiting to see absentee and early voting comes in first, and then after that, we start to see what happened at the polling places today. Curious about how many people showed up. Didn't hear about a large turnout, even though we're electing a new mayor and a new sheriff. 13 commission members, 8 of them will be brand new after this election. So major changes in store for Shelby County, not to mention the Tennessee primary races that everyone is watching. We'll keep you updated. Until then, live in East Memphis, I'm Joyce Peterson. Joe, Kanji, back to you in the studio.
All right. Andrew and I were just talking about Knox County, which is starting to report. And that is where Randy Boyd's from. 12,000 votes for Randy Boyd, 8,000 for Bill Lee. So very competitive there. One would have thought that would be big Randy Boyd country. So you can see Bill Lee is the first candidate who's collected more than 100,000 votes with 34%, but it's still very tight. Randy Boyd with 30%.
We have a nail biter, and then we have another election that we're looking at where we're at the edge of our seats, the Shelby County mayoral race. Let's check in now with Janice Broach. You're with the David Lenore camp, Janice.
Yes, I am. This room is filling up here quite a bit. I also have Han Lee here with me. She works in the trustee's office. She's also a volunteer for this campaign, and she met David Lenore on a riverboat. Is that right?
Yes, I was a student at Rhodes, and I was affiliated with the College Republican. So on a College Republican riverboat cruise, I ran into David, and he was trustee. And at the time, I was looking for an internship, and he's always about education. So he hired me as an intern to further my education, and I've had a great experience so far in the trustee's office.
Right, yeah, he hired you in the trustee's office.
He did, as an intern, November, and I worked up until May. I graduated in May, so then he gave me a full-time position, and now I'm currently an accountant for the Shelby County government.
And working for him, too, in this election.
Working for David Lenore as an accountant in the trustee's office, but also helping him with his campaign. I've been volunteering. We've been at headquarters until like 8 o'clock every evening, right after work, doing phone calls, getting out there, talking to voters. So we've been pretty busy.
Wait and find out what happens. Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and David Lenore talks about how education is key to everything, and there's a good example right there, right from Rhodes College. So we're waiting to find out what the results are. Everybody here is as well, and when we get them, we'll bring them to you. Live in East Memphis, Janice Broach, WMC Action News 5.
You know, Joe, when you're watching an NBA game and for a long time, it seems like there is one team that is just ahead most of the time. Well, it seems like that's what's going on here with Bill Lee. I mean, he's just ahead most of the time.
Yeah, he's got an early lead, but it's dwindled. I mean, his numbers are like this, and here are the very latest numbers.
No, that's a little dated, I believe. What is that? No, that's right. That's right. Okay, I had to refresh. I had to refresh.
That's the freshest numbers, and so Bill Lee with 35%, Randy Boyd with 29%. But in Knox County, where we would expect Randy Boyd to be very dominant because he's extraordinarily well known there, he collected 12,000 votes, according to my colleague Andrew Douglas. And Bill Lee was able to capture 8,000 votes in Knox County. And Michael Nelson, we'd like to bring you back in. Do you think that's significant? I mean, that's a big number for Lee to score in Randy Boyd's backyard.
Well, that's going into his backyard, his home court, however you want to phrase it, and making it a much closer contest even there.